The Wests Tigers Podcast, proudly supported by the Wests Tigers Podcast Forum. Have your say on everything Wests Tigers by joining up for free today. Follow the link at westtigerspodcast.com.au.
Hello and welcome to the West Tigers podcast. This is episode number 135. Eddie joined by Declan, Steve and Gary on this Wednesday night in Sydney. Lots to discuss tonight, boys. All things Stefano, he's re-signing to the end of 2025. Fantastic news for the club. We're going to have a bit of a debate about Luke Brooks in part one between Steve and Declan. We're also going to discuss a podcast or a forum topic, which position of for West Tigers best needs strengthening in 2023. And in part two, boys, we're going to have another confidence rating and we might finish with a little bit of a quiz. Lots to discuss. Declan, you went on last week. Do you have a New Year's resolution as a fan and if you were running the West Tigers?
So if I was running the West Tigers, I think I would make it a mandate for everyone to have a driver's license going into the season with Tukey and Zane Musgroves. Getting filled up. That'd be my resolution for the club. And then for me, I think just try and get to as many footy games as possible while we still can, because we never really know what's going to happen with COVID.
Very good. Short and sharp. Okay, boys, let's rip straight into it. Excellent news this week. Gary Stefano Utoikamanu re-signing until the end of 2025. Before we talk about what this means for the team and the club, were you surprised, pleasantly surprised?
I've been expecting it. The rumour was it was going to happen before Christmas. I was quite confident the club would get it done. I think the club's actually been pretty good to him since he came over. He's gone to another level playing for us, so I was fairly confident we'd get it done, despite a lot of people around the club kind of being a little bit worried about it.
Yeah, Steve, I was probably one of those ones that was a little bit worried and just purely based on past history. What do you think it says about Stefano himself? It's, young players these days have these managers, and I'm sure they would have said perhaps to him it's best to hold off and wait to see how much leverage you can get. But he's re-signed perhaps before he had to.
Yeah, I was a bit like you, Eddie. I was starting to get worried. It was dragging out, and I thought, this could go bad. So I was really pleasantly surprised. And what it says about him, well, so much really. It shows he's bought in to the club. It shows he's bought into the future of the club and the players that the club currently has and the club's accumulating. And it also shows that he's got a bit of respect and loyalty because he's sticking solid to the club that's sort of looked after him and given him an opportunity and played a part in helping him get into that emerging Blues squad and become a prominent first-grade player. So I think it speaks highly about him as an individual and his love and passion for the club as he articulated.
Well said, Declan. Who do we have to give most credit for this? Is it to the player, Stefano? Is it Tim Sheens? Is it the fact that maybe he's loyal to Madge and the fact that Madge was part of the no doubt the discussions to bring him over from Parramatta?
Yeah, that's a good question. You would like to think that negotiations probably started a while ago with them trying to extend him, but I think probably Tim Sheens probably deserves the most credit for this because he's the one that got it over the line. I mean, you would imagine that there would be a big market for Stefano if he was to come off contract and be able to talk to other clubs, particularly the big clubs. So I think Tim Sheens, but it's obviously like a positive from Madge as well because it shows that he has faith in his coaching method. So I think it's probably just a win for the club overall, but in particular Tim Sheens.
I think it actually shows some smarts at the club. He's actually not off contract until the end of next year. So we've actually re-signed him quite early. Going into negotiations now kind of puts us at an advantage because we can offer him an upgrade for this year and next year, where other clubs, they can't change his pay until 2 years down the track. So just that benefit of negotiating so early with him put us in a really strong position. And I think for mine, that's a fairly smart move from the club. And it's a move we're kind of not used to seeing from the West Tigers.
Declan, I'll just come to you. I don't know if it's been discussed, the figures, but is that something that's likely happened? The fact that the existing 2 years on his contract this year and next year have probably been upgraded as a reward for performance on top of the 2 years up to 25?
Yeah, I think Gary's probably hit the nail on the head there. It was a definite clear advantage we had because other clubs, whether they can talk to him now or not, they couldn't really front load the money. And I think everyone would rather have the money now or the pay rise now as opposed to waiting 2 years. So yeah, I think you'll probably find that his salary has gone up. In terms of how much, it hasn't really been reported. But I think that I think I'd be happy with this one, just paying slightly over us, even if that's true, just purely because I think it's not one that we kind of needed to get over the line. But yeah, I think Gary's right on that.
And the thing is, we could have made quite a difference with his salary. I'm not even sure of the exact figures of what he's on now, but I would expect it's the 300, the 350 mark for going into this season. If we're bumping that up to 550 to 600, that's quite a big pay rise over the next 2 years. So that's a real advantage that we had, and I'm really pleased to see us take advantage of it.
Steve, what do you think it means for the club overall? Just looking at it as a fan, do you have more confidence? It seems like a bit of a honeymoon period for Tim Sheens with the two big signings in Coruscant and Papali'i for 23, on top of now re-signing our best young player. Is it a circuit breaker in terms of, this club is not going to stand for losing our best players anymore, or is it wait and see?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. The buzz around the fan base at this early, pre-season time is huge. Like everyone's on a high. It's been a great off-season as far as recruitment goes, and it's just so important, the message it sends out to all of us as fans, that the club are moving in the right direction. And more important than that is that a player that had options and had choices and potentially could go to a marquee club, albeit in a couple of years, chose to stay at the Tigers. And that's got to make you think, well, within the walls of the club, there is belief growing about the future of the club. So to me, it's so much more than just a new contract. It's huge for the club and all of us supporters.
Gary, do you think it's as simple as Tim Sheens coming in and the clout and the aura that he has that makes this off-season so much more exciting as a West Tigers fan, or do you think it's a bit of everything banding together?
It's an interesting one because it's hard to know, not being inside those walls of the club, exactly what's transpired. But I must say, I was one who was a little bit reluctant when Sheens was coming in. I was quite well noted on previous pods saying I had concerns about how he'd managed the cap and that sort of thing. Boy, has he hit the ground running. The results so far speak for themselves, and getting this signing over the line is huge for the club. If we had to sign Papali'i and Appy and then turn around and missed out on Stefano, I think it would have been kind of a step forward and then 2 steps backwards. But getting this over the line as well, it's turned it into a great off-season for us. And it probably makes me give the club a little bit more rope this season in terms of results and what I'm looking for it to kind of class as a successful season.
Well, just looking at the player himself, Declan, Stefano, what do you think his obvious strengths are at the moment? We all think that, he was in that New South Wales Origin squad last year and he's touted to be a potential Origin player, but just playing devil's advocate, we've had big re-signings in the past, probably not as big when I'm talking about, Luke Brooks, Norfoluma, Jacob Liddell, players that have re-signed when they've been playing well and then have never quite hit the heights at West Tigers. Is there a danger that could happen again to someone like Stefano, or do you think he's just a little bit above those guys I mentioned?
Well, there's always a chance that someone's not going to reach the potential that people have kind of forecasted for them. I mean, it's happened. It happens quite a bit in rugby league, but I'm feeling kind of confident about Stefano just purely because 2021, it was just year one, pretty much his first full NRL season, and by the end of it, he was pretty much our best middle forward in the field. And what I really like about him is his first contact when he hits up the ball. He'll usually bump off the first guy in defence who tries to tackle him, and that's a pretty rare skill to have for essentially an NRL rookie. So imagine what he's going to be like in year 3, year 4, year 5 when he's finally getting those games under his belt. So I think in terms of his potential, it is quite frightening how good he could be. I'm not saying he could be as good as Payne Haas, but I think that that kind of caliber of player isn't really out of the question. And you only have to look at the fact that the Melbourne Storm wanted him as well when they were trying to entertain a Brandon Smith and Yuta Kamanu, spot. So that shows just how much other clubs rate him as well. So I'm pretty confident that he'll turn into a good player.
I think we'll see him in the top 2 props in the game within the next 2 years. I think he's that special. He's crucial to our club. That comment Declan just made about winning that first contact, that's so important in the game nowadays. And especially in our team, we really lack a player that wins that first contact almost all the time. And I think that's why he's so crucial to us.
What does it do for the team this year, Steve? I mean, again, you were a little bit last week saying we don't just want to have this as a write-off year. I think this gives us a little boost. Obviously, still some doubts around the front row long term with guys like Talmau perhaps coming towards the end. But you'd have to say having that foundational player in Stefano as a lock to sort of start in that front row this year shores us up a little bit there.
Oh yeah, it does, and it does. You know, like you just said, we're all feeling on a bit of a high. Well, that's got to be within the club as well. So it's building culture, and that helps around the team, and that helps at training, and hopefully that transfers onto the paddock. But you know, let's not kid ourselves. All of a sudden we're not a top 4 team because of this signing. So there's a lot of hard work to be done. But you know, with belief and hard work and effort and resilience and all that sort of stuff and skill, you know, maybe they will have a better season and he'll contribute to that on the field. But I reckon he's already contributed to it by putting his foot down and saying, I believe in this club and we're crying out for leadership, and he's just shown some.
Good segue there, Steve. You mentioned leadership, Declan. I was going to ask, you know, I don't necessarily think he's a captaincy candidate. I wouldn't want to burden him with that at this stage, but I'd be interested to see that leadership group, because we had, you know, guys like Brooks and Nofaluma were in it last year, and Nofaluma was, I think, dropped out of it. I think he's got potential to be some sort of leader, if not the captain.
Yeah, he seems like kind of quiet at the moment, I would say. I'm not really sure I see him as kind of a vocal leader, but at the same time, could you see him as being a leader by example? 100%, because I think we all remember last year when we were getting absolutely pumped against the Bulldogs in the last round, but he made that cover tackle. Again, I can't remember who it was, but we were getting absolutely flogged, and it was just 100% pure effort. And I think stuff like that is what makes you a leader by example. So I could definitely see him kind of evolving into that role as he plays more first grade.
Okay, excellent, boys. I think we're all in agreement there that it's been a good week for the club, and hopefully Stefano can take his game to another level in 2022. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Luke Brooks. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk about Luke Brooks this year, but it's just changed in a week because Declan, he demanded last week, once he viewed our podcast, that we correct maybe some of the things we said. I said I was going to be a bit more positive about Luke Brooks this year, but we're going to have a little bit of a debate. The topic I've sort of settled on is Luke Brooks unfairly maligned? I think Declan's going to be arguing that no, he's not. And Steve is going to be arguing that yes, at times he is, and myself and Gary might jump in every now and then. So I'll start with you, Declan. Why do you think Luke Brooks is not unfairly maligned at what's been a fairly dysfunctional club over the last 10 years, if I'm allowed to say that?
Okay, I would like to set the record straight and say that I did not request a Luke Brooks debate. I was baited into it by Steve, and I did not want to have this conversation again. But just to answer your question, obviously I don't like harping down on a player. Like, I'd like to think of myself as a good person, so it doesn't really come easy to criticize a player. But at the same time, I think you kind of have to be realistic about how you perceive, especially your own players, because as fans, obviously, we all want them to succeed. And sometimes our fandom can kind of make us a little bit biased towards like a certain player. And I think probably Brooks falls into that category, especially in the off season where it appears his stock kind of rises when he's not playing, which is a kind of a warning sign for me. But yeah, I think like, although you hate to see it, players getting criticised, I do think some of it is warranted.
Steve, you think he is unfairly maligned?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to start off to where I stand with it all. Firstly, the debate was Gary's idea, Declan. I'm
Gary's just sitting there like the naughty kid at school, just laughing.
Yeah. And so it's Declan and I then get into trouble, and Gary's just sitting there, eating the lollies. But anyway, look, I think he is one of our best first grade standard players, and we don't have, historically, in the last few years, many players that play consistently at first grade level. And I believe Luke Brooks does. I'm the first to admit that he has not been the halfback and leader as a half that we have needed. Absolutely. And there have been times where I've been so frustrated with him not standing up and leading the team as a halfback around the paddock, as a halfback should, or taking the clutch moment and doing something with it. So I'm in agreement with Declan from that perspective. Where I disagree absolutely is the amount of criticism that he cops, and that every thing that goes wrong with the club seems to be attributed to Luke Brooks, which I think has affected his confidence, and has partially led to him not becoming the confident player that his skill level probably suggests he could be.
So I've done a little bit of research on this particular topic in regards to Luke Brooks, and obviously stats, they only tell like one side of the story. So I'm not gonna just sit on this as my entire argument. But so in 2021, Luke Brooks, he registered 16 try assists. I think Adam Dewey registered more. And the Tigers, they played the top 4 teams 7 times. So I think it was once against the Roosters, once against the Roosters, once again against Melbourne, and then I think they played South, Penrith, and also Manly twice each. And he only registered 3 try assists in those 7 games. So to me, that kind of tells me that he's not really playing his best footy against the best teams. And that to me is also kind of a problem, because that's kind of how you win premierships, against the best teams. And then he also only finished with 1 try in the entire season. And that's not really a big deal to me, but an argument people make is that he's actually a really good ball runner. But if you're only kind of scoring 1 try, then that kind of says to me that you might not be that good a ball runner. And then you can say, all right, what about line break assists? And so Luke Brooks, he registered 10 line break assists. And that was less than Corey Norman, Moses Mumbai, and Benji Marshall, who actually finished on the bench for South Sydney. So he wasn't even starting most of the time. And, the club punted Mumbai because they didn't think he was a first grade player in their team. And Corey Norman doesn't even have a contract anymore. And then everyone kind of says that Luke Brooks is a great defender, but he's actually come 6th in the league for missed tackles in 2021, the second worst half in the league. So I know that these stats aren't the be all and end all, and you can kind of use them to make an argument. But I just think when you kind of look at the whole, all the stats together, it kind of paints a quite comprehensive picture of how Brooks played in 2021 at least.
So I'm not overly a stats guy either. They do play a part, but I'd much rather watch a game and comment on what I'm seeing rather than what I read about in stats afterwards. But they do play a part. So you did warn me that you were going to be on the stat hunt. So I spent a little bit of time looking at some stats myself. And so he's an 80-minute player, which is a positive. Pretty normal for a half though. He was second to Dewey in try assists in the club. He was our eighth best player as far as number of tackles made, and he was the best back as far as tackles made in 2021. Yet his missed tackles were high, but I'd say his missed tackles were high because he's so involved and so committed in defence, he's going to fall off tackles because he's a little bloke as well. He was better than half the squad in post-contact metres. He was 4th in the team for offloads. He was 7th in the team for line breaks, and he was 4th in line break assists. He was 1st in kick metres and 4th in the whole comp as far as kick metres go. He was the only Tiger to score a 40 to be successful with a 40-20 this year. He was 2nd in all runs for the Tigers and 6th in all run metres. Now, when you quantify that, right? So when you do the maths on those figures, he's actually our 4.6th best player in the club. Okay, so the fact that he's criticised so resoundingly and should be dropped, what everyone is saying is we need to drop our player that in the current squad that we have is in the top 5 of our squad. And that to me doesn't make sense.
Declan, I'm going to come back to you in a minute because I see you ready to fire again. Gary, we're big NFL fans, and this may not mean something to everyone who's listening, but look up a guy called Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford played 10 years in Detroit. I think he never won a playoff game. Fans were very divided on him, a little bit like Luke Brooks at the Tigers. he gets traded. He asks for a trade because he goes, look, guys, I love this organisation, but I've had enough. I want to have a crack at winning a Super Bowl. So he gets traded to a bit of a glamour team, a little bit like the Roosters, Los Angeles Rams. Goes to the Super Bowl in his first year at the Rams and is now being talked about from a guy who was a middling quarterback with good numbers but used to turn the ball over as a potential Hall of Famer if he wins one Super Bowl. So I guess my question is that Luke Brooks? If Luke Brooks went to the Roosters next year, would he win a premiership? Would he elevate that side, or am I making a little bit of a jump there?
I think it's a little bit of a jump. I'd more compare, if you're looking at the NFL angle, Luke Brooks to a guy like Andy Dalton, who played for Cincinnati for a number of years, who couldn't get Cincinnati over the line. And when he left Cincinnati, he had quite a good career at Cincinnati, got them to playoffs, but just couldn't get them to that next level. He's pretty much out of the league now. Pretty much as soon as he finished up at Cincinnati, he got a couple of second-string jobs, and that was pretty much it for him. And that's kind of where Luke Brooks could be as well. So for every Stafford, there's an Andy Dalton. He could possibly go to a club, fit in quite well into a side that had the right structures, which I think is what's worked really well for Stafford. He's gone to the LA Rams, who will have quite a good system that supports quarterbacks, and I think that's really helped him through this season. And it would depend where Luke Brooks showed up. If he showed up at the Roosters, yeah, he may go really well and get them through to the grand final, but he's got the pieces around him. If he goes to North Queensland, is it the same story? So I think it really depends on where he lands. And LA, with Stafford, have a history. They've been quite a good side for a number of years now, and he's kind of just plugged into that system. And I think that's how it would be with Luke Brooks. If he plugged into the right system, he'd probably be able to get them to a grand final, but it would have to be the right system.
Declan, that's sort of what I was going to ask, because I mean, I was down on Luke last year, but I've sort of been on the fence most of his career. There was an article, I think, last week where it rated Hastings and Brooks as a top 8 halves pairing. 8. So I don't know. Do you see Luke Brooks as the 7th or 8th best halfback in the league? Because if he is, my argument would be, well, why would you let him go if we're sort of the 13th or 14th ranked team and we got the 7th or 8th best halfback?
I think in terms of, I don't know about like halfback five combinations, because we haven't really seen Brooks play with Hastings yet, so we don't really know what that's going to be like. But I think I've had this conversation with Steve before. I think I would put Brooks maybe like between that 9th and 11th best halfback in the comp range. Like, if I'm probably being a little bit kind, I think that he probably, like, although he's definitely not the worst in the comp. Like, I'm not sitting here and saying that Luke Brooks doesn't deserve to be in the NRL, because he is an NRL standard player. But where my issue is, I think if you want to win a comp, your halfback does need to be in that kind of like 1 to 5 range, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I just don't see Brooks taking that jump anytime soon. So, which is why I'm kind of like would look to move him on if I could get an adequate replacement or develop.
Would you still, because I sort of changed my mind. I was, emotion comes into it. And after we lost to Canterbury and he had a shocking game the last game of the year, I said, I don't care if we've got no one next year. I'd like to see him leave the club for our sake and for his sake. Then I sort of come around and think, well, Dewey's out for half the season. I think we do need to keep him for this year. Are you happy with that, or would you still think if something came up, you'd be happy to see him moved on early?
Yeah, I think I was very like you. I was very emotional after that Bulldogs game, and I was just, the thought of like having the same halves combination kind of made me cringe. But then, yeah, it's like, logic sets in, and you can't really replace someone if you don't have an adequate replacement for them, especially short term. I mean, look, the Knights they're going to sign Anthony Milford to play at 7. That's kind of how desperate they are, which kind of shows just how dry the halves market is right now. But I don't know if Hastings plays well and Adam Dewey comes back well, then I probably wouldn't be that sad to see him go maybe mid-season if all goes to plan. But yeah, definitely, I think it was the right move to hold on to him at the moment.
One thing I'd like to point out, and I only realised this in the past week, all this talk about Luke Brooks and Hastings and Dewey coming back. This time last year, there's quite a big discussion going on about Madden possibly starting the year. And he played the first round. He played 5-8 because Dewey was out suspended. It just shows to me how far he's fallen off the radar, that he's not even a discussion in these conversations at the moment. I think that's quite telling for Madden at the moment.
I think for this season, and you're right, Gary. Like Madden has sort of dropped off our thinking a little bit. But when Dewey comes back, we're going to want Brooks, Hastings, and Dewey in the team. Like Brooks needs to be in the first grade side. He's a first grade standard player, so they've got to play around with that. And my hope is that Hastings successfully plays a controlling leading role. Brooks plays a heads up role, and Dewey perhaps moves into the centre, or if that's not quite working, maybe Dewey comes in at 5'8" and Hastings goes to lock. But with our current cattle, we need Brooks in the team. The other thing I just wanted to mention too is we've talked about this before. We've said what does our club lack, and we talk about that mental toughness, and that mental strength, and that effort when the chips are down, and one thing goes wrong and we fall in a heap as a team. We've seen it time and time again. I go back to that Manly game, 2 missed tackles in the middle, and an epic battle just turned into a cakewalk, just like that. Brooks has been a Tiger since day one. He loves the club. He's committed to the club. He's committed to the colours. He puts in 100% effort with 100% commitment every single week. Now, that does not excuse the lack of leadership as a halfback, but he is the epitome of the type of player we are screaming out to have in our club. So why would we be trying to get rid of him?
One thing that I've been thinking about in the last couple of weeks is when Luke Brooks has played his best football. So in my opinion, the times he's played his best football were 2018, and there's a little period last year where he played some quite good football. All those times have been when he's been pushed wide of the ruck. So in 2018, he had Elijah Taylor playing at lock and doing a lot of link work and getting the ball a little bit wider. During that period last year, Seafarth was playing at lock and kind of pushing him a little bit wider and getting him attacking wider of the ruck. I think that's something that if we're persisting with Luke Brooks, that's what we need to look at. We need to have a look at what were the triggers to him playing his best football. And in my mind, it was playing wide of the ruck. Steve's raised a number of times with me in conversations about the prospect of maybe playing him at 5'8". And if we play a role where we have an inside-outside half instead of left-right, like most clubs do at present, then that's something that maybe could work.
My only, when people say Luke Brooks to 5'8", the only thing that kind of really keeps me back is, do we think that Luke Brooks is a creative enough player to make the transition to the second receiver? Because I just think that Adam Dewey, he pretty much finished ahead of Luke Brooks in all the major attacking stats last season. And when you apply the eye test as well, I kind of agree with that. I think Adam Dewey is a much better 5'8" than Luke Brooks would be. So why would you then move your best player, in my opinion, in Adam Dewey to centre, where he's not going to get the ball as much, just to accommodate Luke Brooks, who's shown that he can be an above-average player at best in first grade?
Because you play players where what's best for the club, not what's best for the individual. What's best for our club is to have Luke Brooks and Hastings firing come the time that Adam Dewey's coming back and Adam Dewey going to centre. If we're rushing Adam Dewey back into 5'8" after 10 rounds, then we're in a world of trouble. The season's pretty much done before we're almost a third of the way through the comp. You play players where what's best for the club, and my hope is what's best for the club at the time Adam Dewey comes back is him playing centre.
Yeah, and if not centre, I'd add to that another option is Hastings or Dewey going into that ball-playing lock, which then gives the option to push, as Gary is just saying, to push Brooks wider, where he has played his better football. And I think that ball-playing lock role is so important in the modern game, and we haven't gotten onto it yet. I'm hoping by the signings we've made, we have gotten onto it now, and our game plan will reflect that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not sold. I think that, although you do make a good argument about what's best for the team, I just think that, you want your best players in positions where they're going to touch the ball the most. And I think that if you're Adam Dewey, I think it's as best for the team if you put him at 5'8", because he's probably going to get a little bit lost at centre. Because, last season, 2021, some games he played really, really well when the ball found him. But there was a few games where he didn't really do much because, playing outside in the centres, sometimes you are kind of starved of possession and you really have to take the advantage of the ball you do get. So if I'm Michael Maguire, I think I would want Adam Dewey kind of playing 5'8" just purely because he's such a danger running the ball. And then if it's Brooks or if it's Hastings at 7, I just tell them like it's up for grabs because Adam Dewey I think deserves to be the 5'8" going forward.
So say we're 6 or 7 from 10 when Dewey comes back at round 10. So you're moving one of the halves to accommodate Dewey because that's what's best for him. Because I still have doubts about him as a 5'8". I've got to be really honest with you. I think he plays his best football at 5'8", without a doubt. He's probably the best player on the field most of the time when he plays 5'8". But he doesn't make the players around him play their best football. That's the concern I still have with him as a 5'8". That's something he really needs to work on. He needs to work on creating space for his outside men and putting them in a better position. So I think that's really crucial. And that's my biggest disappointment in him getting injured last year, is he missed that opportunity.
I just think it's unfair because like you say that Adam Dewey, he doesn't create for his outside backs, but he finished with more try assists than Luke Brooks. And then you're saying to put Luke Brooks at 5'8". It's just like, well, isn't Adam Dewey technically a more creative player? But I do get what you mean. Like, obviously they can both improve at that. It's not like they're Cody Walker setting up tries for Alex Johnson like 4 times a game. But I just think that I don't think he's actually that bad at facilitating to the point where you have to move him to the centres because he's a ball hog.
Not so much a ball hog. I want to see him straight in the line. And he goes cross field. But I want to see him straighten that line and create that extra space outside him, and he doesn't do that enough yet. But that's something he can work on, and it's something I want to see him work on.
Be very interesting to see, boys. I just on Steve's point, I've sort of got my eye on that ball playing 13, and maybe that could be Adam Dewey's position long term. I personally don't like him in the centres. So I think he's too good a player and potentially too influential down the track to be playing that wide. But I take what Gary said, is that sometimes maybe some of his best performances weren't necessarily some of our best performances as a team. So we will put that Luke Brooks topic on the podcast forum, and maybe they can vote who won, whether it was Steve or whether it was Declan or whether it was a draw, because I'm not going to judge on it now because we're running out of time in part 1, boys. But we'll be back in a minute. We're going to talk about which position needs strengthening most in 2023. Another 8 questions for our confidence rating, and I'm going to finish with a quiz. See you back in a minute.
The Ambush brings West Tigers fans together. A dedicated West Tigers members and supporters group, The Ambush aims to enrich the West Tigers experience and bring us, the West Tigers fans, even closer. The Ambush hosts social functions and get-togethers, including game day experiences, where West Tigers fans like you and me can get together to talk and enjoy everything West Tigers. Stay up to date with the latest from The Ambush on the West Tigers podcast forum, at West Tigers Radio, and follow The Ambush official Facebook page. The Ambush. Get involved in 2022.
This edition of West Tigers Podcast brought to you by the West Tigers Podcast Forum. Have your say today and share your opinions with a community of like-minded West Tigers fans. Simply visit westtigerspodcast.com.au and follow the links.
To the West Tigers podcast, episode number 135, part 2. Going to the West Tigers podcast forum to start with. Which position, boys, most need strengthening, I should say, in 2023? Just some replies from some of the new members on the forum. We thank you for engaging with us. Supercoach reckons, and I think this is a fair point, any player much better than what we have, 1 to 17. I think that's quite simple. Avo says our 2 to 5 is a worry. Earl voted for the back row. Halves could be an issue, he says also. Harvey says centre. We have next to none. Mike says position 3, 4 and 13. So Mike's looking at the centres as well and maybe lock. Boone says back row and prop. Stefano and Twal not enough at prop going forward. And overall, I didn't get to see the breakdown of the votes. But personally, I thought this was fairly obvious, Gary. I'll start with you. You could have voted for centre or winger. If there was just outside backs, I would have voted for that because I'm very worried about the depth in our outside backs, I suppose, particularly our centres. Do you have an area in 2023 you think most needs addressing?
Centre is most definitely the position I'm looking at most. I think we're incredibly weak. They were signed some good young players, but I don't really think they're ready, especially for this season and probably next season as well. So we're very light on at centre. I have been concerned over the last couple of years about second row, but that's kind of improving. I'm hoping a couple of those young guys are going to push through in the back row and kind of strengthen that up a little bit. But yeah, definitely centre. And I'm not convinced about our wingers either. But I think our wingers are fairly set in stone with who we're going to have for the next couple of years there.
Declan, do you agree with Gary?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough one. I would say probably straight off the bat, I think probably kind of a replacement for James Tamou at prop, assuming that he'll retire in 2022 or move on to Super League or like another NRL club. So I think that, I don't think you can probably have Twal and Stefano probably starting. I think you probably need to sign someone to replace Tamou, or if they want to upgrade from one of the young players. But I think with centre, it kind of depends on, it's Oliver Gildart. Does he kind of come good? Does AJ Kapoor make the transition to centre? Does Junior Tupou, who we signed, does he show something in first grade? If any of those guys kind of, does Tommy Clough also come back from injury? It will. In all likelihood, we probably will need to sign another centre, but I think it depending on how much we need to spend, I think depends on how well those guys play. And then also, the back row is kind of the same. You'd assume Papali'i was going to have one edge, but then you like to think that either Sean Bloor or Tuilagi could, fill that other centre, that other second row spot, or one of the Cowboys players that we're trying to get a spot with the Lua. So, I think it kind of all depends on how the young players play this season.
I think we do have a number of players, young players, in that centre position. I just don't think any of them have shown enough yet. And I think it's a real possibility that we're looking at either James Roberts starting the year at centre, who was quite maligned last year with how he played, or even the possibility of having to move Peachy out there to play. I don't think that's ideal for the team either. So it does depend how these young guys... I'm really hoping that one of those young guys jumps out of his skin during the trials and demands a centre spot, because I think we really need that to happen to have any shot of being competitive this year.
Interesting you say that, Gary. I don't have his name in front of me. Declan might. I was having a look at just a random breakdown of potential round one teams for every side across the board in 2022. And one of the websites had a young player for us starting in the centre. Kel?
William Key.
William Key.
Declan, is that realistic, or is that a sort of leap of faith there?
I think it's probably a little bit of a leap of faith, just purely because he played a little bit of cup last year, but then he got dropped to Jersey Flegg, and he was playing on the wing in Jersey Flegg. He wasn't really playing at centre, and then I think he got injured to end of the season. So, usually you'd think that a player would be killing it in reserve grade before they jump up to first grade. So, but maybe he's had a really strong preseason. He is in the top 30 squad, but I think he was a little bit like Reece Hoffman in the fact that it didn't really look like the coaching staff was giving him much opportunity. But, he could be just blowing everyone's minds in preseason, which is why they might have heard something like that.
He did have massive raps on him when we first signed him. I remember I was speaking to the club around the point that we signed him, and the talk about him was he was going to be a great player. And then last year it was kind of a flop. He didn't make a ripple anywhere throughout the club. So it is an interesting one. I was quite surprised when I saw it, but I know when we signed him, the club had really high hopes for him.
It's interesting just listening to you guys, throw out some names and positions there. And what it sort of brings to mind for me is the very first forum comment that you read out, Eddie, was it's a little bit early to tell and it could be anywhere across the park. But the discussion we've just had, we're mentioning young guys that are up and coming and are going to be good first graders, perhaps, hopefully, in maybe 2 years' time. And so what that's saying to me is for 2023, we are going to have to target specific positions, right? It's like centre is the obvious one at the moment, but we need to target leadership. We need a couple of 50-plus game first graders in addition to what we've already got to help these young guys that have got that real development potential come good.
It's an interesting one, and people are probably going to get a little bit annoyed because I'm going to mention NFL again, and my head's in NFL because I'm a Cincinnati fan, and it's a big week for me. But in the NFL draft, teams have a thing called BPA, which is best player available. So instead of some teams will target specific positions they're weak in, other teams will target that best player available. I don't think we're in a position as a team where we can target the best players available. We've got to have a look at where our weaknesses is. And you are right, Steve, that could change throughout the year. But we need to target specific areas where our side's weak. We can't just have a look at what flops out of another club and pick it up because they're a good player. We need to really be looking at key positions.
Yeah, and what I'm saying there in addition to that, Gary, is, we've got to target up a player who's got the skill for the position that we're weak in. But in addition to that, we need them to be have some leadership qualities about them as well to lead this young squad.
Leadership's crucial. If you have a look through and try and name a captain for our side, it's almost impossible. So leadership is something we definitely need to target.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be hopeful. I'm sticking with outside backs, but I think they're often easier to produce through your system. So getting Brett Kamali in and Tim Sheens and getting our pathway sorted, surely we can find maybe not the next Marika Korobidi or Josh Addo-Carr, but someone who can fly down the wing who's only going to cost you a couple $100,000 for a couple of years, and you don't have to go out and look, Declan.
Speaking of like young players, I was looking at some videos of that Junior Tupou, and it was only like junior grade, but he does look like quite impressive. He's a really big dude, and he does look like he has the size to play first grade now. But obviously, it's going to depend on the trials, and hopefully he plays a little bit in New South Wales Cup. But I could definitely see him maybe playing a little bit of first grade towards the end of the year. Maybe not the start, but he definitely has, like, from what I can see, the potential to be a good centre in the not too distant future.
And I actually think this year is probably the most interesting trials we've had in a number of years, because we do have those positions that are wide open. That centre position is wide open this year. It's going to be good to have a look at what guys like Bloor and Tuolagi are looking like in the back row this year. So if you're a fan of the club and like seeing players come through, having a look at the trials this year, I think is going to be really interesting and really good. They're all televised, so it doesn't matter where you live, you can have a look at it. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see this year. It's more interesting than most years, in my opinion.
Steve, I just wanted to talk about the spine a little bit before we move on, because we've sort of made quite a lot of changes there with the hope of improving that spine, which I think if you want to be a top 4 or top 8 side, you need to have a strong spine. And we've spent money on Adam Dewey, Dane Laurie, Jackson Hastings, now Api Coruscant, even Tyrone Peachy you could throw in as somewhat of a backup. Is there a long-term spine forming there, you'd like to think?
I'd like to think that, absolutely. I think the signs with Dane Laurie are good. Api Coruscant is proven. So there's 2 in the spine. The great unknown is still the half, despite our rigorous debate in the first half of the pod. Like 6 and 7 is we don't know how that's going to work out this year. So we could be getting halfway through the season and saying we need to bolster it. But I think is it looking better? Is it looking that the spine's heading in the right direction? Yes, but there's still question marks.
Yeah, I think a big thing for me is that it's probably really crucial that at the end of the 2022 season, we can identify our spine. Like, we can all kind of agree more or less that, all right, it's player X, Y, Z are going to be at fullback 5, 8, 7 to partner Api Coruscant at hooker, because I think that's the only one we can kind of like write in stone at the moment, is that Api's going to play hooker in 2023. Like, we don't know that maybe Jackson Hastings, he might not be up to first grade standard. Maybe Adam Dewey, he could get like another injury. Maybe, like all these kind of things are up in the air. So I don't really think I can tell you that with a straight face that I'm going to know what the spine looks like at the end of 2022. But hopefully this is the kind of season where like more questions are answered rather than developing more questions going forward.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I hope there's a direction we're kind of heading with that spine. But at the moment, there's too many unknowns to know what that direction is. We don't know what Hastings is going to be like coming back from the Super League. We don't know what form that Brooks is going to capture. And we don't have Appy till next year. So knowing what that future spine looks like, I if lucky, I think any of us could 50% at most of it. And that's Appy and Dane Laurie are going to be in the spine somewhere. And that's pretty much it at this point in time that I can really put in as being confirmed being there for next season.
Are there any names, Declan? I know it's probably not the right time of year to be looking at names for next year, but as we see, signings now are made 12 months in advance. Is there a player there that is a potential target, or it's a little bit hard to say this far out? Because I don't know. I know Steve doesn't want to write off 22, but I look at 2023 and some of these young players coming through our club and the two signings, and I think we're maybe only one or two players away from potentially being a top 8 side next year.
Yeah, it kind of depends on what you want to add. I think that obviously experience, I wouldn't mind signing an experienced prop. Maybe someone like Ryan Sutton from Canberra, the Englishman. He's coming off contract, and I think he could probably be a good replacement for Tama, because he's not really a rookie, but he's not really too old either. So I think he could be someone that could fill a gap. Other than that, someone like Jeremiah Nanai or Helium Luki from the Cowboys to replace Leilua. I know that we're trying to get a swap at the moment, but they're both off contract at the end of next year. End of this year. So we can sign one of them. I think that would be a good go. Or what's his name? Franklin Pele as well from the Sharks is off contract, I believe, and he's a big prop that you could also put next to Stefano. The only problem with that is I think he's also quite raw as well. So maybe you wouldn't want to put two kind of young props together starting. But yeah, I think everyone so far, without going into a deep dive, I think that's something I would look at, those players.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see on the forum whether some of those guys, Supercoach Earl, Harvey, Mike, Boon, Avo, if they want to maybe throw out a couple of names that we might want to target for next year. Boys, let's go to our confidence rating, if I can find my piece of paper, because it was I thought it was a good subject last week. We had a fair bit of interaction there on the forum with guys giving their ranking from 0 to 10. I'm bringing in 0 this week, Gary, because I think that's only fair if you want to give it a 0. I'm going to start with...
That's a heads up for one of the questions that's coming for sure.
Yeah. I think you might have heard my little preamble. Question 1, I'll start with you, Steve. West Tigers will have one or more Origin players in 2022. Not talking about reserves. You've got to start an Origin game or be on the bench.
2, no, I don't think so. I think Stefano will be in and around. Obviously, because he already is. I don't know that he'll make the jump into the squad this year. Yeah, I'd say 2.
I keep thinking, Gary, of how bad Queensland have become, and do we have a Moses Imbai who could just somehow play Origin even though he's no good in first grade?
Do we have many Queenslanders? I can't really think of any off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm a bit more generous than Steve. I think we're about a 4 to 5. I think Stefano does have a shot at making it. If he makes another big jump this year like he made last year, then he's a chance. But yeah, probably still only around that 4 or 5.
Declan, I'll start with you on this one. Michael Maguire will show flexibility in his game plans in 2022, something you were highly critical of in 21.
Probably a 6 or a 7, just purely because, his job is under pressure. And you would like to think that he respects Tim Sheens enough to kind of bounce back ideas and be a little bit more flexible. As before, where it was kind of just him who was the only person that kind of knew what success looked like. So, yeah, I'll probably give a 6 or a 7 for flexibility. Raising
that point, just something I want to touch on about the conversations between Madge and Sheens. There was an article in the paper, I think it was today, where Madge spoke about how good it is having Sheens to be able to have those conversations. So that's actually a positive towards that. I know it's kind of off topic, but yeah.
I actually think it's more important that those conversations happen with his assistants as well. Like he needs, him and Sheens need to get on. We've talked about that before. If that doesn't happen, a lot falls apart. But for changes to be made, we've just invested in new assistant coaches, 2 or 3 if you count Kamali. Maguire's got to be listening to those and letting them own, part of the growth of the team. If he doesn't listen to them, if he's stubborn, if he's threatened, then there won't be much change and they won't have much impact.
Yeah, I'm only going to go a 4 for that one. I'm sorry, but 2014 is a long time ago. I think Madge's last 6 seasons in the NRL now. He's finished outside the 8, and there were games last year where I know a lot of hardcore fans were frustrated the way we played, the ball, being starved to James Roberts, or were we too flat and what so. I'm hopeful but not confident. Steve, you mentioned the assistant coaches. Confidence rating, Nathan Kalis and Ben Gardner will make a tangible difference to the first grade results this year.
Yeah, well, I'll say 8 if they're allowed to be, if they're working well with Madge and Madge is open to it. The reason I give that such a high rating, one, I was really impressed with the reserve grade team and the way they played last year under Gardner. So that impressed me. So therefore he impressed me. And the word out of the club that we talked about in the last pod is that, Kalis is having a huge impact with the defensive structures. So that both put those together, and that gives me a fair bit of confidence.
Gary, I'm going to come to you with this one. I'm going to give my rating first, though. Luciano Leilua will get back to 2020 form. I've got a 1 for this one because I'm worried, Gary. Not only the fact that his brother's a bit of a lunatic and the fact he's left the club and the fact that he's going to the Cowboys. I also saw a pre-season photo where I thought he looked a little bit not in his best shape. And he's just that sort of, I know he's a good personality and he's been, relatively reliable. But I'm worried about this year. I'm going to go 1.
Yep, I'm probably about the exact same spot. Maybe even, I'm tempted to use your 0. I think he was really fit in 2020. I think that's when we saw his best football. I thought he was great coming across. He looked really good. Last year, he went backwards. He didn't look as fit to me. Looked like he was carrying a bit more weight. And from what I've seen this pre-season, I think that could have got worse. And I worry about his commitment towards the club now that he's signed on with North Queensland. I have big concerns about his role. But in saying that, I liked him at St. George as a near-back player off the bench when he was carrying a lot more weight than he's played with us. I thought he always tore us apart in those games. So as long as we use him right, he can still be of benefit.
So with you saying that, Gary, can I ask, by round 5, is he in our 17?
I think we just need to use him differently. I think he still has a role to play for us. I'd still have him in our 17, but I would probably be looking at him as a bench player that plays short spurts and play that impact role he kind of played at St. George.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that obviously when the club kind of committed to him long term, I think they've tried to mould him into like an 80-minute back row player. But as you said, now that they know he's leaving, maybe they'll feel a little bit more comfortable just kind of using him for like a specific purpose in the short term, which could be that kind of back row role off the bench. Because I think Penrith were really successful with that because they had Kakao and Davido Pangai Jr. coming off the bench. And we all know how that turned out for them. So maybe we could like look to do something similar.
And it's been a role he's kind of excelled in before. Like, we all saw what a difference he made for St. George when he would come on late in games. And I'd like to see us use him in that regard. Pretty much from the start of the season, that's what I would like to see.
Boys, I'm going to ask you all your confidence rating on this one. Start with you, Declan. West Tigers will finish above all 3 sides that they did last year. The Bulldogs, the Cowboys, and the Broncos. I'm going to go with 3 for this one because I've only got us above one of those 3.
Yeah, I'll probably go like a 2, just purely because I think the Broncos and the Bulldogs, they'll improve probably ahead of us. I think the Cowboys, I'm still banking on us being a little bit better than them. But yeah, I'll probably go with you. Probably go with the 2.
Steve, those 3 sides, can we finish ahead of anyone?
Yeah, I'm going to give that a 6. I think I'm saying that because I think we're going to have a better year. And I'm hopeful of that. And I want to be positive. I think the Broncos will improve, and I think the Cowboys will. And for me, I'm totally not convinced that the Bulldogs are going to be as good as the talk is about. So, yeah,
Gary.
Look, I don't think the Bulldogs are going to be as good as the talk is either. I see them around that edge of the 8th to 10th kind of position. But I think that's still probably enough to get by us. I'm hoping for a lot better, and I want to see a lot better. But I kind of have them finishing just above us. And it'll be really interesting to see how Reynolds goes, how he settles in up at the Broncos. And I think that will determine kind of where they finish compared to us.
Declan, Dane Laurie can be a top half NRL fullback by the end of the year. I've got a 4, not because I'm against Dane, but I just think it's such a strong position currently across the NRL that he's probably still in that bottom 4 at the moment in terms of fullbacks that play every game.
Yeah, I'll probably go with 5, just purely because, as you said, it's a very stacked position. There's a lot of really good fullbacks at the moment. It's not really a blight on Dane Laurie, but yeah, I really like. I like. It's insane to believe that he got our tied with Luke Brooks. He got our best player award, and that was in year 1 basically. So if he has a strong, good preseason, imagine how he can improve. And he's just got it all. He's got the quick feet. He's got the playmaking ability, and he's got the step. And he's really reliable. He's got a great attitude on the field. So I really don't see a reason why he can't jump and take that next level this season. But yeah, as you said, it's a tall order though to get into that elite fullback space. But hopefully, fingers crossed, he does.
Yeah, I'm about a 6. One thing we need to remember, he was quite strong last year. He arrived 3 weeks before the season started. So we only got him really, really late leading into the last season. He didn't have a preseason with our club at all. So the fact that he gets a preseason, he gets to work with the players he's going to be playing with, I think we can see a bit of a jump in him this year. Whether it makes him in the top couple of fullbacks, I don't know that he quite gets there. But I'm very happy with how he played last year, and I think we'll see progress this year, which is what we want to see. So yeah, but probably a 6 in regards to that.
Steve, last one, and this is why I've bought my 0 into play this week. I'm going to use it in this case. Benji Marshall will come out of retirement by mid-season and play at least 1 game for the Tigers in 2022. Your confidence rating on that?
0. Won't happen. He's finished.
He's finished. Everyone confident on that? Gary?
Yeah, unless Adam Dewey gets his leg amputated or something, then I can't really see it happening.
Okay. All right, boys. This is a new one to finish off. We're going to do a quiz. It's going to be 3 guys pitted against each other. I might have a couple where you got to buzz in. I'll let you know if you got to buzz in. The boys don't know the question, so they're looking at me a bit horrified at the moment. Question 1. I'll come to everyone on this one. How many games out of the 68 has Madge won as coach? Declan.
Oh God.
Nearest to the pin wins, obviously.
60. I'm gonna go 39.
Go, Gary.
I'm going to say 30.
Steve?
26.
It's exactly right, Steve. I don't know how Declan's come up with 39.
You looked that up in sheets.
Steve said that 26 very quickly, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because I was watching you all and no one was really looking down. Declan's got Madge as a 60% coach with his 39. So Steve's on 1. I'll ask them all again, but I'll go in opposite. I'll ask you first, Steve. The coach with the best win percentage outside of Tim Sheens at the West Tigers is?
Ivan Cleary.
Gary?
Yeah, I'd say Cleary.
Declan?
Yeah, Ivan Cleary.
Okay, I'll give you all a point. Although it was a tie, I would have accepted Ivan Cleary at 42%. Wayne Pearce also 42% with his 1 year. Jason Taylor 39%. Nick Potter 35%. Madge at 38%. And lucky last Terry Lamb on 32%.
What a year, 2 years that was.
Okay. West Tigers Player of the Year in 2008 was, Gary?
Oh, gosh. 2008.
Yeah. Don't look it up. I'm looking at all you.
I'm not looking it up. 2008.
We had a couple of fair players back then.
Yeah, we did. Robbie Farah.
I led you down the wrong path there. Declan, who was it?
Taniela.
Bit of a tricky one. No, it wasn't Taniela. Steve?
No idea. It was Benji Marshall.
No, it wasn't either of the guns. So sorry about that, Gary. It was Chris Hyington. It was Robbie Farah in 06 and 07 and Chris Hyington in 2008. So none of you.
I was only off by a year, doesn't mean I was closest. I was off by a year.
All right. West Tiger, another tricky one. West Tigers leading try scorer in 2012, Declan, was
Ryan.
Gary.
Ashford. Was he even playing then? I don't know. Ashford.
Steve's got his hands on his head, so I don't think he's got the answer.
I got no idea. I'm terrible when it comes to looking back and remembering. I'd say Chris Lawrence.
No, it was Tim Moulton with 12, so not a huge tally and probably not an obvious answer given he played in the halves and a little bit at fullback. All right. How many players, Declan, have played over 200 games for the West Tigers? You can name them if you want, but how many?
Oh, God. 6.
Gary?
3.
Steve?
I was going to say 3, so I'll say 4.
Steve's right again. It was 4. Robbie Farah, 277. Reggie Marshall, 257. Chris Lawrence, 253. Chris Hying, 201. Scandalis, 5th highest at 186.
Yeah, I 2 of those games of high nose didn't count.
All right. Most games as a captain for the West Tigers outside of Robbie Farah. Gary, I'll start with you.
Gosh.
9. I did my research.
Hodjo. Brett Hodgson.
Declan.
I have no idea. I'm going to say, I think it's a trick question, so I'm going to go with Benji Marshall.
I thought of that.
Steve? One of those or another one?
I'll go Aaron Woods.
Well, boys, you had the 3rd, 4th, and 5th most capped as a captain, but you missed the 2nd. Darren Senna, 86 games as West Tigers captain, which was actually a lot more. It surprised me. I wouldn't have got that. He was Hodjo at 50. Benji and Aaron Woods were in the mid-40s. So that was a tough one. Who am I? This is a tough one again, so you've got to use your name.
Eddie Otto.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Who am I? I played for the West Tigers for 2 years only, 2010 and 2011.
Steve buzzed in.
Gary's being mischievous at the moment. He's trying to ruin the quiz. I played 163 NRL games. I probably played my best football at Parramatta and the Warriors, and I was a fullback. But I came to the West Tigers in 2010 and 2011 when I was broken down.
Declan.
Yes.
McKinnon.
Wade McKinnon. Well done, Declan. Wade McKinnon. I did
Declan
have one
shouldn't
more.
get that because he was struggling with his name.
Yeah, if you can't name your own name, you don't get points.
Oh, I did have one more, boys, but I cannot find it at the moment. So I'm going to award the inaugural podcast quiz to Steve, 1 ahead of Declan and 2 ahead of Gary. So maybe you guys can get me back in the future and ask me questions on the spot. But I thought we did pretty well. We've still got a few minutes to go, boys. I don't know if there's been too much NRL news outside of rule changes and stuff. Declan, I believe there was something about that today, about the 6 again rule. I think it's now a penalty unless you're beyond the halfway. Is that close to being right?
Yeah,
Or
so
40 minutes?
if you're within your 40 and the defence concedes a penalty, it's a kick into the goal, I think. It's not a set restart. So, yeah, if you're in your own half outside the 10 at the halfway, you get a penalty rather than a 6 again, which I think is really good because you saw like the really, really good teams. It didn't really matter if they gave away 6 again because they were just pinning your own end. So I think it's a good rule, but I think the more you change it, the more like it gives teams the opportunity to exploit. So I'm keen to see how coaches exploit this one as well.
Funny, Gary, I like for years fans complained about the wrestle, and I, that was a pretty ugly side of the game, but they complained about how Melbourne, exploited it to their advantage. But then I think we've seen over the past 2 years, the rules have swung way towards attack, and Melbourne still use that to their advantage. So does that just mean they're the best coach side, the most talented side, or they're the best at using the rules to their advantage?
I think it's quite obvious their coach is very good at adjusting their game to fit the rules that the game's played under. The fact that they've been at the top for so long, that's the reason they're able to adjust the changes in the game. We need to get better at that. I thought we were really unprepared for the type of game that last year was going to be. It was quite obvious what last year was going to be like, and we didn't prepare well enough for that. So hopefully we've done a better job of getting ready for this year in regards to how the game's played at the moment.
Plus, the Storm did have like the greatest player of all time in Cameron Smith, probably the highest IQ as well. So I think not only did they have the best coach like in probably the modern era, but they also have the best player of the modern era as well. So these things tend to, work your way no matter what kind of style you're playing in that regard.
Who really played like a coach on the field. The way he directed his team around the field, it was just like having your coach out there. So that made a huge difference for them as well.
All right, boys. Declan, last week we talked about headlines. I'm putting on the spot here because I didn't put this on the rundown, but do you have a potential prediction for 2022? Doesn't have to be Tigers-based. Could be NRL-based or Origin, or a coach that flops or a team that goes better than expected. Is there anything that you got in mind early, 5 or 6 weeks out before the season?
West Tigers' revenge game against Mitchell Moses at Leichhardt finally comes after so many years of waiting.
Yeah, I actually mentioned that one last week. I had that down as a Hastings man of the match. It's good to see us playing teams like Parramatta and Canterbury at Leichhardt, because I think it's meant to be a home ground advantage, Steve, even though we seem to get flogged there every year over the past few years. Any other predictions? Gary, have you got any, or you're done?
I just want to go back to the rule changes for one moment, because along with the rule changes, there was actually a couple of amendments to how some things around the game are kind of enforced. So one of them was that the head knock. So a player, the free interchange for foul play was changed from being just for foul play to having to be a sin bin or a send-off offence. So that free interchange for any action that's put on report has been taken away. It now has to be a sin binning or a send-off. So that's a little bit of a change. And the other one that I actually really like, which I'm surprised they've brought in, is interpretations around the stoppage of the game on injuries. That now can't be decided on just by a trainer unless it's a head knock. If it's a leg injury, a trainer can't stop the game anymore. It's only the referees that can stop the game. So we'll see if that makes a little bit of a change as well. But I think that's probably a pretty good move.
Yeah, I agree, Gary. I think that was becoming quite chronic last year. Both those situations where you were getting free interchanges for injuries that weren't even close to a head knock, and then runners running out and stopping the game. That was just ludicrous. So, I really hope they clamp down and maintain it. Don't just do it for the first few rounds. Unfortunately, what worries me, because it's such a big part of the modern game, and it's because coaching staff are so professional right across the clubs, is doesn't matter what the NRL seem to do, clubs seem to find a way to manipulate it, and I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
My worry is we get that first player that gets a head knock and the game doesn't get stopped quick enough, that they then reverse it. I think this is a really crucial thing we need for our game. I got tired of players laying down to kind of get that stoppage in the game, or get that actually free interchange from a clip around the cheeks that gets put on report, and then they get the free interchange. All that sort of stuff is not what we want to see in rugby league. Rugby league's meant to be a game that's built around toughness and endurance, and not a game where we have players diving. So anything that we can kind of do while still protecting the players to eliminate that diving side of it, I think we've got to look really strongly at.
All right, boys, thank you all again for your thoughts and some strong opinions tonight. We're going to be doing regular podcasts each Wednesday night, hopefully for the next month. And I'm also, Joel, who's been missing the first couple, he's keen to do a couple of podcast minis, which me and him and maybe one of the other boys, Declan, Steve or Gary, will be on over the next month. So check out our forum. There'll be some lots to discuss as we get closer to the season. Looking forward to the trials. I think, Gary, one at Leichhardt in 2 or 3 weeks on a Friday night?
Yeah, Friday night one at Leichhardt Oval, double header with Manly, Canberra and the Roosters, I think, involved. And then the same sides playing up on the Central Coast on the following Friday or the Friday before. I can't remember the exact dates. Excellent. Be good to potentially get out and see some live footy in February. Thanks, boys. I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Rising up, straight to the top. Had the guts, got